This special show, I'm Tamanna Inamdar. Now, India's third largest domestic carrier by market share, Vistara, will cut about 30 flights a day in all of April. This means a little under 1,000 flights of Vistara will be cancelled in this month. Now, the decision has been positioned by Vistara as one to avoid unforeseen cancellations. This means, simply put, it's better to cancel flights well in time instead of having angry passengers queuing up at the airport for hours, in one case for 14 hours. So what exactly is the problem? In its official release, the airline describes the scaling back as a way to buffer the rosters. In simple terms, less flights means less pilots required and gives the airline time to deal with the pilots who've been calling in sick. So what really is the issue? In this special today, we're hoping to deep dive and delve into every aspect of what's happening with Vistara, because frankly, it's not just a question of one airline, some cancelled flights and angry passengers. It's putting a spotlight on what perhaps is one of the biggest challenges, not just for Indian aviation, but for the Tata Group that is trying to bring four of its airline brands together. So let's get down to it. Is this an issue of too few pilots? At a strength of about 1,000 pilots for Vistara, that doesn't really seem to be the case. Is it an issue of pilots that are being unreasonable? Perhaps not, because they've had to deal with a possibility of their guaranteed flying hours going down by nearly half. Now, as per a Hindu report, it effectively means a pay cut of up to 1.4 lakhs out of a salary of 3.4 lakhs for a junior pilot per month. Is it then a larger issue? Is this simply mismanagement by HR honchos who thought pushing down stringent leave rules and pay cuts would go through? What does this mean for the Tata's efforts to consolidate their airline business? Here are some of the questions that need to be answered. For one, can Tata's ensure Vistara's issues won't spill over to Air India? Is this truly, at the end of the day, just pure and simple mismanagement? Was it fair in the first place to just say one day that, hey, you're merging with Air India, so you will be paid as much as pilots in Air India are paid, which is 40 hours of flying guaranteed hours? This is what they had cut down to in pandemic. So all of this is what we're going to be discussing today on the show. But I want to start with this report filed by my colleague Aditya Rao. It's an exclusive, and we, of course, at NDTV Profit have been on top of every nuance of this story. So let me come to Aditya first. Now, as you've reported this morning, Aditya, Vistara has been borrowing from Air India, some first officers from Air India, to fill in the gaps. Is that going to be enough?
Well, Tamanna, what I'm picking up from my sources right now is that Vistara is going to borrow first officers effectively from Air India to fill in the gaps that Vistara has been facing after the first officers have been calling sick due to the new pay cuts and the new pay structure that they are trying to introduce. Now, what it essentially means here is that if first officers are coming to Vistara to resolve the entire issue, these first officers will have to go through a mandatory training of 40 days. Now, this training of 40 days will include their training of their ground training, and as well as it will be followed by the other trainings, which will essentially become a training module of 40 days. Now, after this, one more point that needs to be highlighted here is that Air India itself is dealing with a crisis of first officers right now. They have been flying on a one-way command is what my sources are telling me. Now, what is one-way command? One-way command here means that the Air India cockpit is being handled by two captains. Now, when there are two captains flying in aircraft for Air India, how are they possibly sending first officers on deputation to Vistara to handle their operations? There are a lot of alarms here. Back to you, Tamanna.
All right. So how will they handle it is the question. Now, remember, a few days ago, the unions of other Tata Airlines also altogether wrote to the chairman saying that this is not just a Vistara problem, it's a larger problem. Now, before we get to our experts and try and understand what this larger problem is it just a question of who blinks first, or is it really about putting pilots under stress I'm going to go across to my colleague Pragati Oberoi, who's been tracking this story very, very closely. This all started on 31st March, Pragati, and all of a sudden, in a span of 3 or 4 days, you had news that about 150 flights had been cancelled.
Yeah.
What happened since then, and has there been enough clarity from Vistara on what the issue is?
Tamanna, you're absolutely right. While the issue was brewing in mid-March itself, it's very interesting how it started expanding, and all the activity from the management side and the pilot side and the union side happened in last week of April, which is like the previous week or the first week of April. While passengers were complaining of flight cancellations in the end of March itself, and not just cancellation, delays as well. So basically, a lot of adjustments on Vistara's part in the flight operations. All that answers coming from the management all started after the Ministry of Civil Aviation stepped in. So let me bring in some context for our viewers, and they can see it on our screens as well, what the timeline of events has been. And all the action has happened in last 4-5 days. So while towards the end of March, flight adjustments started happening, on 2nd April was the time when Ministry of Civil Aviation stepped in, asking answers from Vistara as to what were the reasons of changes in the schedules of the flights and how were they compensating the pilots and the passengers as to whatever was blowing out. Next, that was the first official communication that we got to know from our sources. On 3rd April, Vistara CEO was addressing the pilots in a town hall, and that was obviously reported exclusively by NDTV Profit first in the afternoon, that Vistara CEO spoke to the pilots, asked them what their queries was, and assured them that there will be answers given to them. Now, come to 4th April, we are seeing more reaction from pilot unions as well, that 2 pilot unions are now writing to Tata Group chairperson as well and are saying that there is a larger issue at play in Tata Group Airlines. So clearly their saying was that the issue is not just about Vistara. While Vistara pilots' demands are very valid, there are issues extending to other airlines as well.
So I just want to understand this clearly. Through all of this, because I've seen the public sort of statements coming in from Vistara, and we're showing those on your screen as well. You've reported on the town hall. At any point, is the management saying that, okay, we understand that you're not happy to accept essentially a drop in minimum flying hours? Because that's the core of the issue which is going on, right? Is that being acknowledged? Is that being talked about?
So, Tamanna, whatever my understanding has been and what statements, official statements that we have from Vistara so far, not in absolute words or maybe not verbatim, but yes, the management has said in simple words that to the pilots that we understand your concerns and we will address them. If the concerns are about the flying hours, the rostering, the pay, they haven't specified them per se. But yes, at some places, the management has definitely said that we understand pilots' concerns. We understand that there are rostering issues, there are flight...
What do you mean by rostering issues?
So rostering issues, what we have understood from our sources is that pilots are being made to fly more hours than it is accepted. While we haven't heard officially from Vistara on that, let me be very clear about it. We did send some queries to Vistara on different days depending on the developments we were getting, but we did not hear back. So whatever pilots and other sources have communicated to us, that while the allotted time is supposed to be around 70 hours a month, there were times when pilots were flying more than that. So there were some instances also where pilots were saying that yes, there are pilots, but they were not able to understand as to why they were not being called for duty.
Okay, so okay, as I understand it, let's put this simply. There are some pilots who are flying too much, and there are others who are not making the minimum cut.
Yeah, that's the understanding that we got from our sources.
All right.
Yeah.
So both conditions are a problem, because if there's a pilot which is being over-rostered or who is being over-rostered, that could be a safety hazard. If there are those who are not getting their minimum guaranteed hours, that's a problem as well. Let's just get some perspective on this, and thank you for that, Pragati. Ajay Aftani, editor of livefromalounge.com, is with me. So is Sanjay Lazar, aviation expert and author. Thank you to both of you for joining us, and you know, we just want to get some perspective on the show. Sanjay, let me come to you first from the point of view of pilots. On the face of it, if there is enough work, should there really be an issue if 40 hours becomes the guaranteed flying time? Because if there is such huge demand, you aren't going to make it up to 70 hours in any case, isn't it? Give us some perspective of why this is the crux of the issue as far as pilots are concerned.
Good afternoon, Tamanna. Thank you very much. And first of all, let me compliment both your, journalists. They've done a great job, gone very deep into the details, and I cannot refute any of those details.
Thank
They're
you.
bang. Let's get to the point that you ask. You asked about there is enough flying. Why are pilots complaining? Now, I'll take you back 3 years prior to COVID, 4 years. The norm was 70 hours, whether it was Air India or Indigo or Vistara, everybody was getting 70 hours. During the pandemic, it got slashed in the national carrier. And then, other airlines cut back a little bit to tide through the pandemic. Post-pandemic, the ICPA and the IPG kept insisting that we go back to 70 hours. Vistara offered its pilots 70 hours. Indigo offered its pilots 70 hours. So, essentially about 70% of the market was paying 70 hours. Now, what is guaranteed flying? A pilot has a limited shelf life. He flies 30 days a month, barring his weekly offs and his rest periods on FDTL. So he has to be utilized by the company. So essentially, a guaranteed flying concept came in about 20 years ago. It was flying hours in the late 90s in Air India. So what he does is he's available, 30 days in the month. He doesn't take any leaves, etc. If he does 40 hours and the company cannot utilize him for 70 hours, they pay him 70 hours guarantee. On the other hand, if they want to utilize him to 70 hours, he's available for them because that is his regulatory allowed flying. He's allowed to fly, up to about 100 hours, 18, 90 hours a month because he goes up to 800 hours a year. So it depends how you, divide that. So pilots are complaining that they're taking away the 70 hours, reducing their minimum earning per month. And then there is no certainty once they go into the larger airline whether there will be enough for them or not. Now, the second point you've made, which is why are they complaining of fatigue, or I think one of your colleagues made it, is because they are flying time off to time off. They are flying roster to roster and almost inhuman social conditions. So a lot of them want breathing space, and some of them are not flying well, like you rightly pointed out. So there is a difference, because like she said, they're doing one-way command on some airlines. They have transferred first officers already. I believe 24 have come into Vistara. I believe there are another 10 or 15 coming in these next 2 weeks. So you will see a large influx of pilots here. On the other hand, we go back to 1 week ago when we were told by Vistara nothing is wrong. Few pilots fell sick. Then to have a town hall, then to admit 15 or 20 pilots have resigned, and now to say sorry, and we will be back to normal, and we're cutting 1,000 flights.
No, so Sanjay, just give me a sense. Is this industry norm? What is the
70 hours is
what is the market leader offering?
Market leader is offering 70 hours, period. So 70%, 65% of the market, which is Indigo, is offering that.
Yeah, yeah.
Air India was asking for that. Pilots were asking, but then the Go Air incident happened last year. So, they signed on 40 hours. Vistara is currently 70 hours. They're asking their pilots to go to 40 hours.
So that's the crux of the issue. At the end of the day, you're asking people to take a pay cut when most of the industry is offering a higher level of pay. Now remember, this is for a job which is an essential safety-led job. Ajay, I just want you to put into perspective what this move is and how you see it as a strategic move from the Tatas. And we put some of those questions. Is this simply HR mismanagement that you thought you could push it down? Because at the end of the day, pilots said, hey, I'm going to take my leaves. To add insult to injury in a sense, at least from the pilot's perspective, all your leaves lapse on March 31st. You can't roll it over either. So now you're thinking that anyway, I'm getting a pay cut. My leaves won't go further. I might as well take all of them. Is that what happened?
Yeah, Tamanna, sort of that's what happened. I think there were certain policies at Vistara, which obviously, look, it's not that the CEO is sitting on top of this whole situation on a daily basis, right? He must be getting a report and dispatches and everything, but he's not micromanaging the situation. There's a head of rostering and there's a rostering department which will do a lot of things. what I assume happened was that there was a certain stress that built up into the system. What they did not factor in was that there was leave expiring on 31st March. And in spite of the fact that it's called sick leave, if you call in sick, nobody's coming to check, right? So everyone decided to take a day off. Many people decided to take a day off, I mean. And they did not have enough people to replace these 70 odd people who went to leave on the last day of March or the second day of April. So that's where the whole system came apart. And we're still dealing with about 20 flight cancellations a day. Yeah, the other part of the problem is the fact that there are these people who are being asked to take a roughly about 40% pay cut, which I think in today's era is unheard of. And just remember that the market leader is perhaps going to be willingly happy to absorb them if they're going to be relieved from uh, Vistara. In fact, 15 people are rumored to have already left for the other carrier.
Okay, so you're saying, one second, let me get this straight. You're saying that the next leg of the problem could be an exodus, because if there is higher guaranteed flying hours available on offer, there is no real reason why anyone should stick around for a lower level. Now, Sanjay, I just want to understand this. Now, between the 31st of March and April 4th, maybe it was all about the sick leaves. What has compelled Vistara to announce flight cuts for the whole of April? How is that going to help? Is it because there are insufficient pilots? Is it because it gives the management enough bargaining power to deal with the pilots in the interim?
Tamanna, in this case, I think there's a larger spotlight of scrutiny that has come on. As Ajay rightly pointed out, the head of the roster, the operations head, should have been pulled up. They should have been looking into this issue at Vistara. I don't know why the HR did not mollify the pilots prior to this. The most important, the DGCA has issued as I understand from press reports, a show cause notice on training practices at Vistara. Now that is puts a big question mark. The moment that comes in, and pilots had already pulled back and reported sick, the logical thing for Vistara to ensure this does not happen was to cut back on flights. Once you've got the eagle eye of the ministry, the minister, the DGCA, over your shoulder, obviously you can't really do things that your roster may have been doing earlier, like pulling the pilots to its rubber band edge. The second thing is, which Ajay also pointed out, and you asked about industry standards. If you can pay an expat 20 lakhs and 80 hours guaranteed, I will tell you that you must pay the Indian pilot his 70 hours, whichever airline it is. And it is going to become an exodus, not just one airline, all, because it's going to impact. You see, if you're ordering 2,000 aircraft and you're not paying everybody industry standards, it's going to impact. This is where the role of the regulator and the ministry will come into play, because already we know there is a flight and duty time limitation CAR, which was to come in, but which has been deferred because a number of people or companies asked for it to be deferred. That was regulating fatigue. That was also controlling, the flow of pilots. It was controlling their rest periods, their duty times. That has been put on ice. The second thing that comes in is now you're having this huge merger, which is great for the corporate, because the merger is the need of the hour eventually to achieve economies of scale. But you don't bring somebody's salaries down when you're merging them. You protect them and take them into that new environment. It may cause another issue. That's an HR aspect to be looked at. But I think there's a lot of soul searching that needs to be done in this, and a lot of work to be done to rebuild morale.
It's also making me wonder about all the hiccups that they're going to face while consolidating this business. And we should pull back a little and look at this in that perspective as well, Ajay. The Tata Group is got a number of challenges on its hands. They're trying to revive Air India, they're trying to rebrand it, improve quality, etc. And then on the same time, you are trying to make this business profitable by cutting down minimum flying hours. How are they going to put this all together when you still have one player with a 60% market share domestically?
So I think, there's this old adage, right? Penny wise, pound foolish. That's what happened in this case. They were trying to perhaps, I don't know, okay, on the balance sheet, the profitability impact of the whole scale of the situation. But having done mergers and acquisitions in the past, not at this scale, I can tell you there are two approaches. One is everything flows top down, and then people accept it or move out of the system, and the other one is to take everyone along. In this case, what's happened is I think they're trying the top-down approach, where everything is a diktat, and then people figure out if it works for them or not. What with a resource that is as constrained as cockpit and cabin crew and so on. These are people. These are your frontline staff. These are your ambassadors in the air, okay, and on the ground. And all these people need to be taken along. You can do as much 35,000 feet blue sky strategy, but it will need to be implemented on the ground. And I think every person in the Air India / Vistara group should be visible of what their role is in this, and how can they contribute and how will they benefit out of the situation. That's just a change of approach that I think the group needs to make.
Let me take that question to Sanjay, the hiccups that they're going to face. And Ajay describes it as penny wise, pound foolish, and a bit of a top-down approach. Is that going to work with pilots who are right now in great demand in an aviation industry which is expanding rapidly?
Taman, I've seen almost 4 or 5 mergers during my lifetime in the airline industry, and not all of them have been very smooth. In fact, none of them have been smooth. Having said that, I do believe that in the larger sense, this merger is critical and essential for the Tata Group, for Air India, for Air Asia, Air India Express, and Vistara. And I believe, every airline knows all its employees are the core of any operation and merger, but pilots and cabin crew are your frontline. And they're a very, very critical resource. So if we don't handle them well and handle their integration properly, it's going to explode. And I believe that, the past week has probably seen, Vistara sufficiently chastened, and they will climb down and probably, like I keep saying, talk to their pilots, talk to their frontline employees, and not talk at them. But it's going to require careful planning. I have seen, a lot of what Air India has planned, with Tata's have planned and behind AI. And I believe it will be a successful merger, but it will take some time. But we've got to realize one thing, that you can't buck the norm. If the industry norm is paying, if Qatar can pay a a commander 25 lakhs and a first officer 10 to 12 lakhs, and you are paying your own expats coming in, foreigners coming in 20 lakhs, you can't expect an Indian kid pilot to take 2 lakhs and take a 1 lakh hit and say, I'll fly your plane. We've got to be cognizant of these things. We're a global market. We're charging global fares when we fly internationally. I believe we should pay our staff, the norm.
My question is that how have Air India pilots then accepted 40 hours for so long? At the end of the day, if there's a merger, either the Air India pilots get paid more or the Vistara ones get paid less. So then how have they accepted it? It's been working, isn't it?
You've seen the ICPA, IPG letter. There's a story to the Air India pilot issue as well. I don't know if you recall, a year ago, Go Air shut down. So there was a glut of pilots in the market who were willing to take jobs at any price. It was unfortunate that Go Air shut down. It impacted flying, it impacted fares, just like Vistara's cancellations have led to almost a 30-35% increase in fares in the last week and going forward in summer. At that time, there were, 200-300 pilots available for jobs, and they jumped at airlines. So the Air India pilots the 2 unions did accept it at that time. But I do believe we've not heard the last word on that yet. I think everybody will have to sit at the big round table and have a chat. Otherwise, you rightfully said, there's going to be realignment of numbers somewhere.
Also going to see airfares go up? Ajay, do you expect that to happen in the month of April? Peak summer period, vacation period also for, a lot of schools. Do you see airfares simply going up with at least 10% of Vistara airlines or flights off the roster?
So I think, Tamanna, I was just checking for some flights for May. At this point of time, things look steady. Some very near-term flights, the next week or 10 days might have gone up in terms of pricing, but that's not something that we specifically can put on this issue. But I think if you look at fares 3-4 weeks out, at this point in time, they look stable. But then again, I'm only looking at metro routes at this point of time. Some of the routes where there may be just one or two services like to, Jammu and Kashmir, Leh, and so on. These tourist routes might be seeing more spikes than the one that are there for the metro to metro connectivity.
Right. So, we'll see what happens to airfares. We'll see what happens to the negotiations, and be sure that negotiations will definitely be on between two sides. This is not the end of it, as Sanjay Lazar has also said. But for now, thank you, Sanjay. Thank you, Ajay. We'll keep tracking the story right here on NDTV Profit. We've been breaking all the twists and turns on it. We've requested and we urged the Vistara management to come and speak with us. We want to understand what has been happening. Because at the end of the day, there are some very, very basic questions. Was this simply a high-handed attitude? Was this mismanagement? Because this could have been avoided if you were talking to pilots, isn't it? If not, then what really is the reason? The second really big question, were they being over-rostered? Now, this is something that, has been said, we've been reporting, but we also need clarity on it. Were some pilots being over-rostered? Because then that can be a real issue and concern. Is it fair to cut guaranteed hours from 70 to 40 because there's a merger? Is there any other way out, especially if the market leader is offering 70 hours of guaranteed flying? Were the pilots' concerns then taken into account when this decision was made? And can you get away with not doing that, especially looking at the task on hand for the Tatas who want to now consolidate their airline business? We'll be on top of the story, but thank you so much for joining us on this special show. We'll take a very short break, but stay tuned. A lot more on the other side on NDTV Profit.